Oops. Hey fam, I know I've been absent lately. You know, stuff was just going down in my life and just. So I'm finally getting things back together, but I had to make a quick run to Walmart because it's my favorite time of the year. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And no, I don't mean Christmas. I mean Halloween. Ask anyone. Halloween is my favorite holiday, not just because the candy, but because of the dark emo stuff that I get to do and not be labeled a freak. So I get to be me one day a year. But so I was at Walmart and I somehow managed to always be hungry when I finally leave the house. And so I've gone to Walmart specifically to find some plaster bandages so I can make a mask, and couldn't find what I needed. What I did find was the colors for the acrylic paint that I needed. Mind you, satin, gloss, and satin is gonna look weird, but I'm gonna make it work. Yeah, those three things, they were like $1 each, and then it was like $1 for the sponge brushes and that I may not use. I may take those back. But the greatest find of the day. Oh, regular old beef jerky, right? How much do you think this cost me? Like $3, $4? This bag, 3.25 ounces of Sweet Baby Ray's beef jerky was $1 at Walmart. $1. I swear on a stack of Bibles. I almost bought like all of them, but then I had to remind myself, Katrina, you're flat ass broke. So until next month. However, this makes me happy because NaNoWriMo starts next week, Thursday. And this is like one of my go-to, if I have to sit on my ass all day, snacks. I'm so excited about this. So when I get a little bit of change in my pocket, I'm gonna go back and get some more. Now, I promised you guys some teen angst. And not necessarily teen angst, but this is more like one of my documented early attempts at being a writer. I don't know if you guys can read that. It says The Traveler's Tales by Katrina Elena Rosewan, AP English 4, Mr. Landrum, period 5. This was 12th grade. We were reading the Canterbury Tales, and the assignment was to rewrite one of the stories. Now, I was not going into I don't even remember. The only one I remember is The Wife of Bath, because that just sounded like the craziest shit ever. So I decided I was going to rewrite the opening story. Now, I'm not going to edit it. I have not edited it, but look at how pretty the typing is. I would never get away with submitting a story in that kind of, in blue, I'm thinking this is Arial, or blue, some really artsy font or whatever. So if anybody knows anything about the Canterbury Tales, it's one of the very first novels in stories, which I'm really happy about because I wrote a novel in stories that I'm trying to publish. More about that later. But there's an introductory story to everyone that's on this trip. And then every story after that is everyone's individual story. So I decided, because at the time I was heavy into this youth group at, it's a cult, this church. And so they did mission trips. So this is where, and now I told you I'm going to read it exactly as it is written on the paper, just so you can see how bad I was at the time. So, The Traveler's Tales by 17-year-old me. We departed from International Bible Baptist Church. Our destination, Moscow, Russia. Our purpose, to spread the word of God. I tell this tale as our journey begins. We are a large group, a group of 16. We are a diverse group, a motley crew of sorts. One of the many was not part of that many at all. Standing just under 6 feet 2 inches tall, he was known simply as the loner. He wore dark clothes that seemed to be 2 sizes too big. His skin was a shade of dark chocolate. His eyes were 2 pieces of onyx on alabaster set into a serious face. He smoked, but only for the image. He didn't enjoy much inhaling tar, arsenic, and all the other killers that tobacco companies put into their products. Anyway, smoking made his throat hurt. Not that he ever used it much anyway. He hardly ever spoke, not even to his parents. And when he did, he spoke in a low whisper, causing his already deep voice to be inaudible. He had a road to himself. He stared out the window wistfully as his music blared in his headphones. He cursed himself silently for packing his sketchbook with his clothes. 5 black shirts, 7 pairs of black jeans, and 2 pairs of black shoes was all he packed for his 3-week stint in Russia. The wheels of the plane lifted and the wings obscured his vision. He turned to look at his traveling companions. As he looked up, he caught the eye of the preacher's daughter. This girl was a very interesting creature. She was tall and dark and lovely. Her father tried his best to hide her very curvaceous body. But she was a sheltered teenager in need of an outlet, a way to scream out but to stay quiet simultaneously. She was a loner in her own mind. No one understood her, not even her brother. While all of her peers were listening to rock and pop and alternative, Melanie, as she was often called, jammed out to the beats of Lil Jon, Dr. Dre, Eminem, and others. She was very eclectic. One day she would be dressed like any member of the prep school masses. Some days she would dress conservatively, but most days she would dress like she belonged on the hooker streets of any town, USA. But her parents didn't know. She would often change clothes at school or not even bother to come home. But her clothes wasn't the only thing she hid from her parents. The boyfriend she wasn't allowed to have, she slept with. She even got pregnant, but they never knew. She found the loner very attractive. His utter defiance and disregard for the rules allowed her to look into the life that she wanted but was not allowed to live. She felt like she had to reach up to touch rock bottom. Her parents had a vision of how their little girl would act, feel, be, that they didn't even bother to see that she was acting out. Sitting next to her were the Regs, R-E-G-Z, by the way. And just like their title states, they were regular kids. There was no serious behavioral problems or anything like that. Andy and Veronica had been best friends for years before they started going out. Andy was 6 feet tall with sandy blonde hair. By the way, at this time I was just getting accustomed to being the tallest girl in my class, and I was 6 feet tall. So everybody in all my stories and all my writing, 6 feet tall. All right. Andy was 6 feet tall with sandy blonde hair. Surfing every day over the summer for the past 17 summers that he had been alive has turned his skin a light caramel color. He was, well, a regular guy. He had some friends, of course not as popular as the preps, P-R-E-P-Z, and not as alone as the loner. Life was, quote-unquote, no big thing for him. He lived for skateboarding and playing his guitar, and of course Veronica. She too was an average kid. Long curly hair framed her oval face. She had full red, because I do that, lips, mint red. She had full red lips and large almond-shaped brown eyes. Her voice was always had a laugh in it, even when she was tired, sad, or depressed. She was fun-loving. Anyone that needed someone to talk to and someone to listen to them, Veronica was that person. A paper ball flew across the main cabin. It hit Eric, one of the preps, square in the middle of his forehead. Eric is not a nice person. He used his material possessions to attract people to him, but he was insecure as a person. He acted like the world owed him something just because his parents traveled too much. He wanted to be everyone's friend. He would change his appearance to fit in. He would change his attitude towards life just to be accepted. Just an all around follower. All around unreal and all around unliked. His girlfriend was nothing like him. She just stayed with him out of tradition, presumably. She fell into all the stereotypes. She had long blonde hair and was just under 6 feet tall. See, told you. She spent money like it grew on trees. It didn't matter to her as long as it was green or plastic and was accepted everywhere. She was happy. They hardly ever talked to each other. It was more of a relationship of convenience. There was another couple on the plane. They were best friends from diapers. They often dressed alike. They were the well-rounded teens. They excel in school, sports, and community service. Between the two of them, they belonged to 14 clubs at the school and were the presidents and vice presidents of at least 6 of them. There was nothing too miraculous about them. They had their college plans already made and were just waiting to graduate from high school. Seated in the row in front of the WRT, well-rounded teens, was the epitome of devoted Christian. Her name was Milagros, but was known to the group as Millie. She was the pious college student. She wore very plain clothes, always in a cotton calf-length skirt and white button-up blouse. She never spoke above a whisper, a trait that goes back to her Puritan roots. That doesn't make any sense because her name is Spanish. She walked proudly around the campus with her Bible in hand, a cross around her neck, and Jesus in her heart. She was about to graduate in a couple of months and felt it was very important that she take this trip. She was often seen having spiritual conversations with the preacher's son, a far cry from his sister. Michael was the spitting image of his father, both earthly and otherwise. He was very into the idea of taking over his father's church when he died. He had his life planned out in front of him. He was going to Yale Seminary. Once ordained, he was going to become a junior minister at his father's church, which will one day be his, just as it had been done in his family for many generations. Floating around from group to group was everyone's best friend. He too was a tall blonde with green eyes. He was built, but still very thin. His soccer player build made him a favorite among the female members of the youth group congregation, based off a real person. I personally have been eyeing him for some time, but won't get into that right now. He was very sweet and caring. Look at him and the way he acted around teenagers. You wouldn't have guessed he was 20 years old. But to him, age was just a number, not a lifestyle. That worked for him and sometimes against him. It was not just a flight full of young people. There were adults on the plane as well, sort of, there to keep us from killing each other. 2 of said adults were the leader and his wife. They were a very unlikely couple. The leader was short, bald, skinny, and very energetic. Again, based on real people. His wife seemed to be the exact opposite. She was chubby with a full head of hair and apparently mellow. The missionary was also on the flight. He was a cool soul. He wasn't raised in the church like Melanie and Michael, and he wasn't always a poser like Eric. That doesn't make any sense, but whatever. He wandered down some roads that he doesn't want others to venture towards. There was someone that cared enough to take him off the path of self-destruction. He was glad that the teens on this trip were accepting the call of Christ. To him, the flight signifies, at least on the outside, 9 souls that will not be making bad decisions, but outward appearances are not always accurate. The final adult, 13. Still, the count was off. Anyway, the final adult was the missionary's wife. There was always something different about her. Her name was Hester on purpose. And just like her namesake, she had trouble staying with just her husband. She met her husband when they were in high school. He was new to the small town that they lived in, and she took it upon herself to introduce him to the neighborhood. They were married a year out of high school, but she held a secret. She had always enjoyed the company of other women, more than she should. Her lesbian tendencies were suppressed for a few years after her wedding, but couldn't be held in any longer. No matter what country they were in, she always found a woman that could appreciate her stunning body. Her husband didn't seem to appreciate her, and so she ventured off, but not into the arms of another man, but into the hands of another woman. Yeah. Lolita, again, I maybe wrote this a couple of days before it was due. Hester particularly, and this is one time I'm changing something because it's glaringly obvious. Hester particularly enjoyed being in the European countries, not just one woman at a time, but 2 or 3 to satisfy her. She never bore her husband a child, and once he found out about her extracurricular activities, he did nothing but pray for her. She wanted to leave him and be with someone else, but couldn't get up the nerve to do it. It was true, she was using him to travel and meet women, but somewhere in her heart, she still loved him. And now there's me, Elena, tall, dark, and lovely, but not to those who matter. I don't have much to say about myself, but just that. Oh! Look at this! Bonus story, The Missionary's Wife. Maybe this will be like a bonus episode. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy it. See? What's that? 2 A's? What? It's awful! Tell me what you guys think in the comments while I, scarf down this beef jerky, because best believe this girl's gonna scarf down this beef jerky. And I'll see y'all on the flip side. Stay creative, folks.